What's up, guys? It's TechnoViking23 coming to you today with a little bit of an interesting video on some gaming news that just came out actually yesterday that I have not really seen too many people talking about, especially within the Bungie and Destiny community. So this is some very interesting news. I would actually like to thank one of my subscribers, Kick-Ass Gaming. He has his own gaming channel. I'll link to that below in the description if you guys want to go check him out. He actually posted this link and mentioned this in the comment section of my Friday Gaming Ramble video, leading me to this article. And this article is very, very interesting. It's by VentureBeat, and it is reporting on a lawsuit that was just finished the other day, where Marty O'Donnell has won his lawsuit against Bungie. If you guys remember, he was let go, fired. The details weren't very clear. Marty said he was fired. Bungie posted that really aw shucks type, we're sorry you're leaving, we leave as friends type post on their weekly update a long time ago. And of course there was a lot of stuff clouding around that. Well, O'Donnell had several lawsuits that he filed against Bungie. He won the majority of them, as far as I'm aware from reading back. He won a lot of lost wages, won a lot of his stock back, and Bungie basically came out of it smelling like crap. But some interesting findings. I'll link the article below in the description also so you guys can read about this. But there's some interesting things that are mentioned here that came out of this court case that to me shows a little bit of the influence that Activision actually has over Bungie. And this is something I've always mentioned in a lot of my Destiny videos where I'm being critical of Destiny, is that everybody thinks Bungie is going to have all this say in making Destiny this great game. And one thing I've always said is that anytime Bungie comes up with an idea that they want to implement into the game, Activision's sitting back there saying, well, if we can't charge $20 or $40 or whatever we want for DLC, then it's not going in the game. And that's the way I strongly feel this whole setup is working between Activision and Bungie with their contract and everything. And I've read their contract, at least the contract that existed before the game was pushed back in 2014, and have said several times in a lot of my videos that Activision has full creative control over Destiny. They have the final say over everything. So it doesn't matter what Bungie wants to do to try to fix Destiny. If Activision doesn't think they can make some money on it, if they don't want it in the game, they can basically say, sorry, not happening, we're not putting your idea in the game. And some of the information that came out in this article sort of reaffirms that. And of course, we know there's been a very crazy and weird history with Activision and Bungie since they started working on Destiny. Obviously, the game was supposed to come out in 2013. A lot of people don't remember this. And then, of course, Joe Staten ended up leaving. He went back to Microsoft, which, I find that very interesting because Bungie was so ready to go and quick to get away from Microsoft. They hated working with Microsoft. And yet, a lot of their big-time employees went back to Microsoft or stayed with Microsoft to work with 343 on the new Halo games. Joe went back there. It's rumored that Marty O'Donnell's actually probably trying to have him in talks and get him back on board doing some things for Halo, which would be awesome. But I just find it very funny that the majority, the core of Bungie really is not there anymore. It's very interesting. And that's something I've also mentioned in a lot of videos, is that this new Bungie that we've had for the last year or so, they just seem like a bunch of, pardon my language, a bunch of arrogant asshats, and they kind of present themselves like that. All these live interviews they do, of course, we all know Luke Smith. That guy's been a piece of work since the Halo days. But it just seems like this new Bungie's this just very arrogant group who just thinks their own crap doesn't smell bad. And it's been very interesting to see that transition for Bungie since they went over to Activision. And of course, Activision has got a long track record of wanting to put their hands in the cookie jar, not giving their developers a lot of freedom, and that's one of the complaints that's been coming out. I've seen on several other sites and other videos I've watched where apparently Bungie is not very happy with the relationship with Activision because they were not happy with Microsoft because Microsoft was really pushy on getting them to make Halo games on a deadline. But Microsoft also gave Bungie a lot of freedom to do whatever they wanted with the Halo games, to make them the way they wanted to interact with the community the way they wanted to. And apparently that's not the case with Activision. Apparently Activision is very strict on the deadlines, but at the same time, Activision wants to have the final word on everything. Activision wants to give their, they want to have control of the creative process. They want to say what's going to go in the game. They want to say how Bungie's going to handle interactions with the community. And this is just pretty typical Activision. They're just like EA. They both like to get their hands all over over their developer and kind of dictate everything that goes on. And when you're working under those kind of conditions, a lot of the times you're not going to be putting out a great product. You're going to be under a lot of pressure. And we've seen this with Destiny. So far, it's been a very lackluster game thus far. We'll see if the Taken King can change that. But as I've said from day one, as long as Activision is behind this game, it's going to be very, very hard for it to ever live up to the hype that the game had back in 2013 when we saw those great trailers at E3. Of course, that build of the game is apparently not what we're playing now. There's apparently a few different builds of Destiny that are out there, and we're playing a certain one of those, and it appears with the Taken King they're actually changing the build again. With it looks a little bit more like what we saw in 2013, where the weapons have different attack levels and the light level's different, all this other stuff. So of course we don't know exactly what happened with Joe Staten. I don't think we'll ever find out. That's mostly speculation. It's been all over the internet. The main point speculated on that is that what happened was Joe, of course, he wrote all the Halo games. He's an incredible writer. He's written amazing stories in the past for other video games. And the main rumor is that basically he wrote this amazing, incredible story for Destiny. And then Activision came in and basically said, no, we're going to chop this up and we're going to make DLC out of most of this. And you guys are going to put out this part of the game, and then we're going to make money off this DLC that's already in. So they wanted to cut the story up and piecemeal it out for DLC. And the speculation is that Joe was not very happy about that. So he left, he went back to Microsoft, and he apparently took his story with him, and he has the rights to that story. So Activision Bungie was unable to use the original story that they wanted for Destiny, which is one of the reasons apparently the narrative is so confusing when the game first released, and it was kind of, you're going all over the place. You didn't really know what you were doing, who was doing what with the story, who was involved in the story. And the story, as many of us have said, was largely terrible, and it's non-existent. And none of the DLCs really fixed that so far. So they say they're trying to go back, and that's something they're going to be focusing on with Taken King, is this narrative and fixing that. Although in none of the reveal streams so far, we haven't really seen any of that. So I'm still very skeptical about how that's going to work. But they basically, this article's got some details, and it says here that what happened was when they first started the contract, they first started to get into it, they basically had Marty O'Donnell do the entire soundtrack for all of Destiny right away in 2013. For the entire 10-year run of the game, he did all the soundtrack. He actually worked with Paul McCartney, who used to be with the Beatles, obviously. And they made this great soundtrack for Destiny. You've heard some of the music in the game, and that's something I've actually given Bungie praise for in the past, is they, art-wise and music-wise and gunplay-wise, all the mechanics of the game are great. The music is amazing. The art looks amazing. But Marty O'Donnell's always made great gaming music. So he made the whole soundtrack for Destiny, and they put it into an album called Music of the Spheres. And what often happens with these game composers, a lot of the times to help them out, to make them a little bit of extra money, is a soundtrack for a video game will be released on its own, so that they can get a little bit of credit for that. They can get a little bit of money for that. All the Halo soundtracks have been released in the past, credited to Marty O'Donnell, of course. Well, Activision apparently stepped in and said, we're not really feeling that. We don't really want to allow the soundtrack to be released or something along those lines. And apparently that didn't make Marty O'Donnell very happy. So, he's already disgruntled from the get-go here. And then the other thing that happened was he did all the music work for Destiny. And then at the 2013 E3 reveal, right before the reveal came out with the trailer, Activision came in and said, we're not going to use your music. We're going to make our own decision on the music. And apparently Activision then took over the work on the trailer, supplied its own music and on its own, they made their own decisions with it. They didn't have, really even care what Bungie had to say about it. So Marty O'Donnell was apparently very angry because of this. And he said that Activision had overstepped their proper role by assuming artistic control of the trailer and the music. And the CEO of Bungie at the time basically agreed with him and went to Activision and filed a veto letter for Activision to not have that control and for Bungie to be able to make the trailer and do all that stuff. And Activision basically overruled them and said, we don't care, get the F out. We're doing it our way. And so then during E3, O'Donnell, he tweeted out that Activision, not Bungie, had made the trailer music, and he apparently made some other threats to try to keep the trailer not for being posted online. And of course, obviously, Activision wasn't very happy about that. And O'Donnell, according to the court filings, he said he was trying to preserve Bungie's creative process, their artistic integrity, and their reputation, keeping faith with fans and protecting Bungie and its intellectual property from Activision's encroachment into artistic decisions. So this kind of affirms a lot of what we've heard speculation-wise about Activision during the development process of Destiny, and even still with Destiny, trying to get their hands dirty, get their hands in the cookie jar, and control everything. And this is typical Activision. Like I said, they've done this with many other games in the past. And so this, of course, led to a very awkward situation now. And so Activision basically pressured Bungie and said O'Donnell was hurting their contractual obligations and hurting their contractual relationship. Very, very interesting. So apparently what happened here is Activision advised Bungie that O'Donnell's conduct might constitute a breach of the party's contract, which of course would lead to a lot of legal mumbo jumbo and Bungie coming out probably losing a lot of money. So it's very interesting to read all this. It's very interesting to see this. And like I said, I'll post this article down below. You guys can go read the whole thing. It's got a whole bunch of other stuff about the case and about all the monetary reward stuff that O'Donnell won. He got all of his stock back. He has some control in the Bungie company, actually. It's funny because the court found that he was actually, one of the 7 guys who founded Bungie, and he still has that share of interest in the company. So Bungie is afraid, actually. They tried to file a dispute here and say that they don't want him having that control, obviously, because they're afraid he's going to come in and disrupt board meetings and maybe even gain enough of a share to have more of a say in what the company does, which is for them is a little bit scary, apparently. But it's just so interesting to see all this happen and see that Activision advised Bungie that it was a breach of contract because O'Donnell was raising a stink because Activision was trying to have too much of a power play, too much control over Destiny. So very, very odd. And that rumor had come up also when Joe Stanton left, that Marty was a little bit upset about that, and that's another reason he was mad, and that Joe Stanton also left because Activision was getting their fingers too dirty and trying to control too many things. So I thought this was a very interesting article. It's not a smoking gun or anything, obviously, because unfortunately most of the court records are still sealed, but apparently there was a lot of discussion in these court filings about what actually went on during Destiny's development process. And unfortunately, we're not privy to those details because it's within sealed court records. Maybe that'll leak someday, or we'll get to read that. But it's going to be it'll be interesting someday to look back on this and see exactly what happened with this game, and exactly what kind of role Activision has played in this. But this doesn't surprise me in the least that this information is coming out. It doesn't surprise me that Marty won that lawsuit at all. And it just was really funny because Bungie, of course, they sent him off like he was leaving voluntarily. They made this post on their weekly update about, leaving his friends, and it's been a great run and blah blah. And on the other hand, Marty was like, they fired me. And Bungie's trying to say, we'll smooth it over and make it, like you're leaving. It's okay, we're friends. And it's apparently not what happened. So no love lost between Marty O'Donnell and Bungie, which is just really sad because if you guys are Bungie fans, like I say a lot of the times, people think I just hate Destiny and I hate Bungie, but I was a huge Bungie fanboy for years. Loved the Halo games, loved the stuff Bungie did with Marathon. I've even their Oni games on the PlayStation 2. Been a big fan of their company for a long, long time. It's the main reason I actually pre-ordered Destiny, because I was like, this is Bungie. This is like the company if they're going to make a great game, if they're going to support a great community, if they're going to not fall for those shenanigans and the other bullshit that happens with a lot of these publishers. This is Bungie. This is the company to do it. They did it for such a long time. The only real hiccup they ever had for me was with ODST, where they tried to charge like $60 for a 5-hour campaign, and of course they got a ton of backlash over that, and they changed and made sure they smoothed that over with the fan base. But it's just amazing to see what's happened to Bungie, how far they've fallen from where they used to be this really amazing developer and this community-oriented developer. You look back at the Halo games, how Bungie did so much with the community after the games came out, providing all the different tools for the community to thrive and just create their own content and just be amazing. I think most hardcore Bungie fans who, aren't complete fanboys would objectively look at Bungie now and say it's definitely a whole different company. And obviously, a lot of those people stay behind to continue working on Halo, but it's just shocking. It's shocking to me to see how this company has changed so much, and to see Activision's influence, in my opinion, is what this is. Is Activision has basically got their claws in another developer, and you see this happen a lot. You see this happen all the time. EA's done this with BioWare a little bit. BioWare used to be an absolutely incredible gaming company, and you've seen EA kind of get their claws into BioWare and get their influence in there. And EA, thankfully, though, is smart enough to kind of let BioWare do their thing with most of their games, like with Dragon Age and Mass Effect. As long as they can get their microtransactions in there somehow, EA is pretty happy, and it's just like, go ahead and you guys can do what you want. But you can definitely see their fingerprints all over stuff, and Activision's even worse. One of my least favorite publishers out there in Activision. But anyways, guys, wanted to just kind of mention this information because really no one's talking about it, and I doubt you're going to see anybody in the Destiny community bring this up, of course. But again, just shows kind of how Activision's influence is really over this game. And again, that's my main point I always say in a lot of these Destiny videos where I'm being critical of what they're doing. It's like there's really not much Bungie's going to be able to do to change the game that they can't implement as DLC, and you guys are going to see it continue even when, like I said with the Taken King so far, some of the changes look really great, but in terms the main problem is the content. And from what we've seen so far in a lot of the reveal trailers, I just don't see where there's all this content where you're not going to get done with it in 2 to 3 weeks, and it's going to be the same repetitive process again, and you're going to be waiting a few months and then spending another $40 on DLC to get the rest of the story, to get the rest of the game. And that's Activision's MO. That's what they do. They chop things up and try to make more money without spending money. So that's why you haven't seen any, if you guys go back to before they released this game, Bungie was very adamant. They said, we're going to support Destiny. We're going to support this game. We're going to be doing all kinds of additional content that's not paid content. We're going to have free content that's going to release sometimes daily, sometimes weekly. There'll be events and things that will support the community. Yeah, and the game came out, and that never really materialized. So, but it's very interesting, guys. I would suggest you guys do, if you're also a little curious, go on YouTube and search for some of the Bungie interviews prior to this game coming out. There's 2 that Angry Joe did that are especially interesting to hear. Yeah, he has one with Deej and Irk that he does in Seattle. And then he has another interview he does with Deej a couple of weeks before the beta, actually. And there's some very, very interesting answers to a lot of questions that then the game, it's like to look back a year back then and you look at it and you're like, you guys were so full of crap when you answered these questions, very, very funny and very interesting. Anyways, guys, I've rambled on long enough about this. Like I said, I'll link the article below so you guys can check that out. Thank you again to Kick-Ass Gaming, who mentioned this in the comments on one of my other videos. Link to his channel also if you guys want to check him out. So that's pretty much it, guys. Just some very interesting things about Activision here, as usual. Anyways, guys, that's going to do it for me. Hope you enjoyed this video and found it informative, and we're able to hear some news here that you probably aren't going to see in too many other places in the Destiny community. So that's going to do it, guys. Hope you're having a great day. Hope you're having a great weekend. And I will see you again next time.